Hello, everybody. Jason Meyer here, and welcome to Learning from the Masters, number 5. And right down the line for me is Cindy. So she's the one doing all the work behind the scenes. So thank you for joining us. Thanks to all of our new subscribers, and especially thank you to all those that donated. It helps keep the streaming subscription up to date and all the other expenses going. So you help take care of us, and I'll do my best to take care of you. So tonight, things are going to get real. We're going to really take it to the next level. Okay, up to this point, we've talked about visual power, its contents, what makes it up, the crew, and ways to strengthen and weaken it. Okay, tonight we're going to take the next step, and I'm not going to give it away. I'll let you guys figure it out as we get into this. But pay attention. We're not going to have a student section tonight, but I imagine we're going to have a bigger student section next week. Okay? So why don't we jump right in with the short masters segment before we go to the demo and our exercise. So it's good to see everybody here. So many familiar faces. Hello, hello, hello. Great to have everybody here. All right, guys, here's the masters. The masters use visual power to great effect. They use it to bring you to a singular spot with great intensity. They also use it in multiple spots. To bring you through or across the canvas. They orchestrate the visual power to create a symphony for our eyes to behold. All right, did you guys catch that? So tonight we're going to go from a single visual power to multiple visual powers, right? This is going to be the key to being an effective painter. Okay, I think in this one exercise, you can really gain so much because it requires you to pay attention to everything, Okay, so we're going to demo a little bit about visual power and remind you guys how to vary it. And then after that, we'll have a little talk before we do the exercise for the week. Again, I can't stress this enough. This exercise this week is where it's at. And I want to see what you guys do because I want to talk about them quite a bit next week. Okay? So, but first things first, let's review how we handle visual power. Let's review the current hierarchy of visual power. From strongest to weakest, we have our highlight at the top. Next comes the light. The dark is after that. And the middle will bring up the rear. But what if there are multiple lights and highlights? We might show that something like this. So maybe instead of 1, there could be 5. And with our current crew, our highlight, light, middle, and dark, we could put together 5 visual powers. We start with the dark, we get the middle in there, the light comes next, and finally the highlight. If we were to represent these 5 on a scale from strongest to weakest, we could represent it like this. So the problem is, how do we create a hierarchy of visual power when there are multiple visual powers? And the solution is adjusting the highlight and light using the middle to modify the note. There's 3 ways to do this. First, we can simply mix the middle in with the light and the highlight, as such. The more of the middle you mix in with the light and the highlight, the weaker in terms of visual power those notes become. So if we compare the bottom 2 notes, a highlight on top of our light, to the top 2 original notes, the highlight on top of our light, can you see that the top notes are much stronger? So that's one way to modify. The second way is we can adjust the middle next to the light and the dark. You guys remember as we put our dark down and the middle down, we said if we wanted to get a little more oomph, we could lighten up the background on the dark side and darken up the background or the middle on the light side. And by doing this, there'll be more contrast and therefore more visual power. As opposed to just using our original middle. The third way is by doing both, combining the first and second. So when we do this, this is going to make this weaker. So the point being that by modifying the notes themselves and by modifying the pieces around the notes, we have a wide range of visual powers to choose from. And in this way, we'll create a hierarchy of visual power. A hierarchy of visual power. You guys down with that? You know what I mean? In other words, if we had those 5 spheres in a row, and I said, okay, we're going to orchestrate these one's going to be the weakest, 2 is here, 3 is the strongest, 4 is here, 5 is here, that you should be able to do that. And what do you think that's going to relate to or correspond to in your paintings? If you're doing a portrait, do you want your chin, your nose, your cheeks, your neck, and your forehead all equal? Or would you like the viewer to focus on a particular one of those or particular area? Right? Is there any need to really focus on the sitter's neck? You know, not unless you're doing an allegory where that's an important part of the story. So usually we play that part down or give it weaker visual power. Okay, so this is what this is leading to. I can't wait for you to see all these exercises. It's going to be probably a little more challenging than you think, but I'd love to see what you end up with anyway. Okay, next week we're going to take what we learned from this week and then put those forms on top of one another. And that would correspond to any complex form. For instance, cheeks with a nose on top of it. Have you guys been able to separate your nose from your cheeks in your portraits? Well, if you haven't, you do this week's exercise and next week's exercise, you'll understand how to do that. Okay, enough chit chat from me. This will be the last segment tonight. It is about 15 minutes, but if there's something you don't understand, I tried to follow it up with an example pretty shortly thereafter. So just watch all the way through, and then I'll make sure to stick around a few minutes after. So if there's any question this week, with our few minutes of extra time, we can take questions. All right, well, let's look at this week's exercise. For this week's exercise, we're going to take our standard crew, our dark, middle, light, highlight, and we're going to do a visual power 5 times. But the catch is we're going to have 5 different visual powers, and we're going to orchestrate from weakest to strongest the visual powers. So when you're mixing up each pile, make sure you're mixing up enough that you can do this 5 times. Okay, and you'll want a little bit to play with too. So mix up plenty of paint for this. Don't make it too hard work. If you're having a hard time mixing the paint, add a little more medium. So we'll orchestrate this with the first one being the weakest, the second being the second strongest, the third being the strongest. The fourth will be weaker than the second but stronger than the first. And the fifth will be weaker than the fourth but stronger than the first. So again, with our same crew here, we're going to mix up 5 visual powers right in a row, but they're going to differ in how visually strong they are. Okay, so this is going to be a real workout and a test, right? You're going to use all the muscles you've built up to this point. I would like to take just a second and say that how you put down the paint matters, right? Is it solid? Can you see through it? And the bigger and the flatter the paint is, the stronger it will read or carry. And inversely, the smaller and the more broken up the paint is, the less it will carry. So as we finish up mixing up our four piles, I know this takes a while, but so much training is happening, and I really want you to use your eyes and judge. Right? Then we want to remember to harmonize our light into our dark and our light into the middle, and our dark and middle into our light. After we've mixed up the middle, harmonized the middle, then we add some middle to our highlight. Now that we've got the crew set, let's remind ourselves what we're doing. So we're going to use the same crew, and for the first visual power, it's going to be the weakest. The second visual power will be the second strongest. The third visual power will be the strongest of all five. The fourth will be weaker than the second, but stronger than the first. And then the fifth, we want weaker than the fourth, stronger than the first. Okay, and these will be painted all in a straight line across here. Okay, we work dark to light. So we're going to put in our darks. And our darks are going to stay the same. Right? Something needs to stay constant, so our darks can stay the same. They should stay the same. Your dark should be the stability in your painting. Right? The inside edge is soft. So if you'll take the time to soften that inside edge, it'll start to turn immediately. Rather than looking like a blob of paint out there, it'll start looking like the shadow side of a sphere. By the way, edges can take a long time. Paint quality can take some time. So don't be in a hurry. Good takes time. We'll start by putting the background in even, remembering that we can vary the background a little bit to affect the visual power, and we'll use that to our advantage later. But we want to set up some constant here so that we have something to measure our visual power against. One of the ways you can affect visual power at this stage is the same paint will be weaker, thinner, and the thicker, heavier you get, it'll be, see how number 3 is the strongest? So I went a little thicker and heavier over that, over the light side of that. Right, and that'll pay off to make number 3 appear visually stronger than the rest of them. Again, don't be in a hurry to get the middle finished. The middle is a huge key to the painting. right? The middle is what really sets up the relationships and harmonizes your dark and your light. The light's the next thing. And one of the things I'm going to do here is the bigger, flatter the spot is, the stronger it will carry. So on my strongest, number 3, I'm making that the biggest, flattest as well. For my second one, I don't know if you saw that, but I just snuck a little background in there. And I won't make that quite as big and flat. Then 4th is the next weakest. And remember, this is just one step here. We still have the highlight and edges and background. But if each step we can do it just a smidge weaker, 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 then in the end it'll really read. So I want to make sure that my shadow is in there. It wasn't put in very flat. So now that's really sticking off the background. And notice just with the paint quality, again, it's the same paint. You can affect the heaviness of the paint, the lightness of the paint. So now with that same idea, since I reinforced my shadow, remember if we go darker around our light, that'll have more impact. And I'm starting and I put the thicker stuff around where I want more impact, my 3rd visual power. Then as the paint wears off of that, I snuck it over to our 2nd. Right? And as I do the 4th, you'll notice I keep thinning that out a little bit. So it's not quite as heavy as number 3. And for number 5, I actually will put the dark on the shadow side because 5 is one of the weaker visual powers, along with number 1. So we're just being very, very clever about how we use our crew. Okay, there's tremendous power in this. So now I'm affecting a little lighter in the middle. And again, since I want one weak, I'm going to put a lighter background against the light side. And that will cause less visual power. Then again, go darker in the background on the shadow side. Now, for our strongest, we're going to put our lighter background against the dark. Okay, so when you guys do this, you're going to have to use your own eyes and really taking all these things in consideration. See if you can't give us 5 visual powers that are orchestrated, just like this. By the way, if yours isn't a huge success, please do not fret. Once you get the hang of this, and if you can get the hang of this, it will give you tremendous power as a painter. You'll have control you never dreamed of having. Okay, but it may take more than a few attempts to do it. But think of it as an exercise, and just as much as you can do. If you can only do 3 of them, just do the first 3. Okay, but this will really sharpen your painting chops. Now we still have the highlight, don't we? So for my strongest, I'll go the pure highlight and put it up there. And now that some of that's been taken off, I'll put it on my next one. And then by softening some of those edges, I can make number 2 a little bit visually weaker than number 3. And for number 4, we're going to add a little background in that, so it's not quite so bright. More background for number 5, so we're even weaker. We still want to see it, but we just want it weak, and we want it really weak for number 1. Okay? Let's paint. Okay, in the end there, did that make sense to everybody? I knew when I was explaining it I was going to lose a few of you, but hopefully after you saw the visuals, it becomes extremely clear what we're doing. The purpose of this exercise is for you to fully understand and execute that understanding of visual power, like how to manipulate the background, how to manipulate the light, that the shadow should not be manipulated. Now, this doesn't mean not ever, but in this case, for learning these skills, right, a stable shadow all the way across, so that leaves the light and the highlight plus the background next to it. Okay? I would like to say one more thing here. We'll see if I can get this right. Yeah, here we go. For those of you who have not thought about it, when you hold your brush, if this is the canvas, if you hit it like this, that's going to make one mark. And generally this is like moving paint. You're not laying paint down. So the canvas is one way, and a 90-degree angle, you're on it. The other way you can do it is lay it parallel, and then you're going to be striking it with the side of your brush. Okay, so just the way you put that paint down can change how light or dark, how strong or weak it is. So use that little tip as you do this exercise. All right, Claudia, wonderful, wonderful. I figured after you saw it, you'd be doing it. All right, thank you, Sachima. Okay, guys, I really hope to see a ton of these. Whether they're success or failures, send them in. Okay, this isn't about judging or embarrassing anybody. I'm not going to call anybody out, but I assure you some other people are having the same problems. Okay, and so if we can see what you're doing, then we can talk about how we can fix it. And then after that, it's just a matter of learning to stack those forms on top of one another and then controlling where you look at in those forms. Voila, you're an artist. All right, so we'll give it about, 30 more seconds, 45 seconds to let the feed catch up, if anybody has any questions or anything. If not, we're going to keep these nice and short and let you guys enjoy your evening and hopefully get to painting. So I know there were some questions about landscapes, how this applies to landscape. We're going to do one more week on this visual power and form. And probably after that, we're going to start heading into the landscape direction. Now, landscape artists need to know how to do form. Portrait artists need to know how to do depth of the landscape. So it all comes in together. All right. Oh, thank you, Janny. Really appreciate it. All right, guys. So I think we'll leave it there. Please remember, if you liked it, give us a like, a thumbs up, hit the red subscribe button. It really helps us out. And if you thought it was worth it, Cindy usually puts the link up for a little donation if you want to help pay for the streaming subscription and things like that. It's not necessary, but it is appreciated. Thank you for everybody who's donated so far. It really helps us out, and we, again, appreciate it. So, from Cindy and I, have a great week. Paint, paint, paint. Let's see those exercises, and we'll see you guys again next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.